As we enter 2024, Donald Trump's favorability continues to surge, reaching a record high 43%. This is the highest it has been since he left office back in 2021. At the same time, Joe Biden's approval rating continues to plummet, now reaching a record low 38 points. This has made the 2024 presidential election as competitive as it has ever been, and in this video, I will share with you guys my updated 2024 presidential election prediction. Let's head over to the map. We are going to start off by filling in the solid states for both candidates. These are states that the opponent is not going to have any chance at winning. These are the least competitive races on the map, and states that are going to vote for either Joe Biden or Donald Trump by margins of 12 percentage points or more. So for Joe Biden, he's going to win the states of Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Vermont, the 1st District of Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, all by safe margins. As for President Trump, he is going to easily carry the states of Idaho, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, the 1st and 3rd District of Nebraska, as well as the at-large vote, the states of Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Alaska. This gives Trump 125 electoral votes to Biden's 181. Now we're going to move on to taking a look at the likely states. These are states that are going to vote for either candidate by margins of between 5 and 12 points, so slightly more competitive but still relatively safe for either Biden or Trump. And before we continue, please take this time to subscribe. Only 15% of you guys are, and it would be great to continue growing this channel before the election. And so looking at the states remaining, we have a few that are going to be won by Joe Biden pretty easily. The two most notable ones are going to be Colorado and New Mexico. In Colorado, Joe Biden easily won this state by nearly 14 points in 2020, but in 2024, it is likely to be slightly more competitive. In New Mexico, Biden also won this state by a double-digit margin last time. He may do so again, but with the Hispanic vote shifting towards Trump and New Mexico being the only Hispanic majority state, it is unlikely that Joe Biden wins New Mexico by more than 10% in 2024. Moving east to Virginia, we have another state that Biden won by double digits last time. However, a year later in 2021, Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, won the governorship in the Commonwealth of Virginia. However, Democrats were able to win back both state houses in 2023. So Virginia has in some ways shifted back to the left, and we can definitely expect a Biden victory. However, it will probably be by under 10 points, as many of the most recent polls show Biden with a weaker than expected margin over President Trump in the state. Two other likely Democratic states are going to be Minnesota and New Hampshire. Both states went for Biden by 7 points in 2020, and they're likely to be won by Biden by over 5 points again. It might be right under 5 points or right above, but a likely categorization is more practical for Minnesota and New Hampshire, as these are two states Democrats have traditionally done very well in. We saw the re-election of Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire in 2022 by a double-digit margin, and of course the re-election of Tim Walz as governor in Minnesota as well in 2022. So both of these states are going to be slightly more competitive than they were in 2020, but they're still likely to remain pretty snug in the Biden column. The final state that will be in the likely Biden category will be the at-large vote in Maine. Biden won it by a likely margin in 2020, and it's been over a decade since a Democrat has carried Maine's at-large vote by a solid margin, and Joe Biden is not going to be the one to do it in 2024. So this will round out all of Biden's solid and likely states, totaling 225 electoral votes. As for former President Trump, there are quite a few states that he is going to win pretty easily, most notably the state of Florida. This is 30 electoral votes, a state that has been trending to the right ever since Trump won it back in 2016. Before that, it was considered one of the most purple states in the country, a true bellwether. It was won by Bush, Obama, then Trump. However, even though Trump lost the 2020 presidential election, Joe Biden lost Florida by an even larger margin margin than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. And then more recently in 2022, Marco Rubio won his Senate re-election bid and Ron DeSantis won his gubernatorial re-election bid, both by solid margins over 15 points, making Florida truly a red state now. These 30 electoral votes are going to easily go to President Trump, and he's going to be the first Republican to win Florida by over 5% in nearly 40 years. Next up, in the state of Texas, we have another major state going to Trump. This is going to be 40 additional electoral votes, putting him up at 195. The polling here is actually pretty good for Donald Trump. However, it's pretty abysmal for all of the other candidates that are running for the nomination. Only Donald Trump wins Texas by a likely margin in the head-to-head polls that have been released in December, and so Texas's 40 electoral votes will easily go to the former president. He hasn't always had the greatest time in the Lone Star State, as of course we saw in 2012 Mitt Romney won it by a solid margin, as well as John McCain winning it by double digits in 2008. Donald Trump has not been able to break 10% in Texas in his two elections. In 2024, he is not likely to win by over 10 points, but he's going to win the state by at least 5%, and that will be enough to make Texas likely. We also have the states of Iowa and Ohio, two states Trump first flipped back in 2016, and these are two states that Trump has really done very well in recent elections. He has totally changed the political makeup of these two states. Ohio was very similar to Florida in the past as a bellwether state. However, it is now firmly in the Republican column after two solid election cycles for Donald Trump, and so this will give Trump an additional 23 electoral votes and put him up at 218. Now, the final district to be categorized as being Republican is going to be the 2nd District of Maine. This is going to be the final likely Republican categorization we have to make. The 2nd District went to Trump by likely margins in the past two elections, and with no major changes in redistricting, the 2nd District is once again going to vote Republican, giving Biden 225 and Trump 219 electoral votes, with all of the solid and likely states filled in for both candidates. We are now left with just 7 states and the 2nd District of Nebraska. These are really going to be the races that are going to decide the outcome of the election, but we're just going to get the 2nd District of Nebraska out of the way. It's going to be a lean margin for Joe Biden. He's going to win the 2nd District. It's a pretty urbanized area. He won it back in 2020 and is going to do so again, so this will give him 1 electoral vote. Now, moving on to the remaining lean states, these are going to be states that vote for either candidate by margins of between 1 and 5%. So they're going to be some of the most competitive states on this map. And so we're going to start off with North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. The Tar Heel state is going to vote for Trump once again. He won the state by 1.3% in 2020. But he is likely to win it by a larger margin this November. In North Carolina, almost every single poll currently shows Trump with a pretty commanding lead over the incumbent president. We can also now give Trump both the states of Arizona and Georgia, two states that Biden flipped back in 2020, being the first Democrat to win them since the Clinton era. In Arizona, Biden won the state by 0.3%. However, considering how Trump is leading by pretty large margins in the polls and the fact that Joe Biden's victory in 2020 was just so slim, we can reasonably expect Trump to win back Arizona. Democrats have done relatively well here in recent years, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win the state back in 2028. But looking at how things are going right now for 2024, Donald Trump is likely to win the state of Arizona, as well as the Peach State with its additional 16 electoral votes. Here, Trump is leading by pretty large margins in the polling as well, and you have to consider just how small the margin in Georgia was in 2020, Biden winning the state by just 0.2%. This was the most competitive state of the 2020 election cycle, and with Joe Biden as unpopular of an incumbent as he is, Donald Trump is likely to win back this state that he lost in the last election. We're now left with the 4 most competitive states on the map. These are states that are going to be decided by margins of less than 1%. And we have 4 of them: Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Starting off with Nevada, a state that hasn't voted Republican since 2004. However, Democrats did recently lose the governorship in 2022 when incumbent Governor Steve Sisolak lost his re-election to Republican Joe Lombardo. So Nevada is now governed by a Republican, and Donald Trump is polling very well here, and he is on track to winning the state of Nevada back. This is his first flip in 2016 and 2020. If you combine his two elections, Nevada is the only state that Trump did not win in 2016 that he is now expected to win in 2024. We now have the three remaining Rust Belt states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I'm going to start by giving Joe Biden Michigan with its 15 electoral votes. The state has always been the most liberal out of the three upper Rust Belt states, and Democrats recently won the governorship here with Gretchen Whitmer winning her re-election by a double-digit margin. However, the same cannot be said in both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, seeing Trump's increase in popularity nationwide as well as Joe Biden's decline. He is now favored in the state of Wisconsin, a state in which he is doing pretty well in the polls in, however not nearly as well as he's doing in Pennsylvania. This is Joe Biden's birth state. 19 electoral votes. Donald Trump is crushing it in the Keystone state of Pennsylvania. So Trump is now on track to flip Wisconsin and Pennsylvania back. These are two states that helped him get to 270 back in 2016. He lost them in 2020, helping Joe Biden win the presidency. But as of right now, it does look like Donald Trump is on track to winning back these two upper Rust Belt states this November. And so this will give Donald Trump 297 electoral votes, winning his re-election to a second non-consecutive term, as opposed to Joe Biden losing his re-election with just 241 electoral votes.